Good evening, everyone. Thank you for your patience and welcome as we return back to the council meeting for June the 24th, 2024 that started at 1:30. We will now continue on with the item we left off on, which was item 7.3.c, Shared Accommodation Bylaw, COR 2024-233 and Addendum Report COR 2024-288. We had heard from all of our delegations earlier this evening on that, and also on the heritage designation matter that we'll be dealing with later on. And now we'll go to questions of staff based on what we heard from the delegations and questions that council may have. So, Councillor Chapman.
Yeah, thank you. So my first question has to do with if you could staff give us a scenario? I mean, it was mentioned by some of the delegates that they have concerns about bylaw or the police going into a unit for whatever reason without much notification. Can you explain to us when this would even happen and what type of scenario that might cause for that to happen?
Thank you. Through the Mayor, Councillor Chapman, the only time that staff would be going into units would be if we had a pre-arranged appointment for an annual review or a biannual, every other year for the licensing inspections. So that would be a date that we would pre-pick with the owner and go in to do an inspection of the unit. Other than that, if a tenant were to complain, if somebody renting the unit were to complain to us that there were concerns within the unit, they would be able to give us authority to enter into the space that they're renting in order to do an inspection. But other than that, we would have no authority to walk into a unit or go into a house uninvited without getting that permission in advance.
So that could be something like a maybe there's no heat in the unit in the middle of winter, that sort of thing? Or?
That's right.
Right. Or a property standards concern, but I guess there you're not going into the unit.
It could be anything.
Yeah.
So it could be any sort of property standards violation that they felt that was not up to standard in that unit. They could contact us and set up an inspection.
Okay. My other question had to do with the posting of addresses and contact names and whatever on the website. Can you just speak to that, or somebody speak to that?
Oh, sorry, it's me. Thinking it's magically going to happen. Go ahead.
We're not proposing that their personal information is posted on the website. It would simply be a registry for people to go and look and see that a particular address is licensed with the city and the last time of inspection. We're not looking to publish an owner's contact information or their name or any of those details.
So that would be for both the Airbnbs and the lodging homes, or the
Correct.
short term, yeah? I think those are my questions for right now. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Somebody else want to, who's staff too? Oh, you just you didn't want to add anything?
No.
Okay, sorry. Councillor Stretch then.
Thank you. I was wondering if staff could help us understand the insurance, the difference needed we had some delegations talk about the needing of a different type of insurance, a business insurance versus a residential insurance.
Keeping in line with our other bylaws, such as the business licensing bylaw, when you're operating a business, you typically need commercial insurance. The indemnity clause that we add for the city to be listed as an insured also comes from the insurance pool as instruction of us on what we request.
Okay, thank you. And then sorry, I'm just revisiting my notes. So the licensing numbers get associated with the address. So there will be an address listed online, but not any information or name details, but there would be an address with a licensing number. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. That's it for now. Thank you.
Okay, I don't see any others in the queue. I have a question. If we were, if council was inclined to move forward with the lodging house planning regulations tonight, but potentially to defer the piece around the shared accommodation so that we could take some additional time to consult and to work and to perhaps look at a number of the issues that were raised today. Is there a mechanism for us to do that? And I believe part of that would require us to approve the planning principles tonight, but defer the bylaw till the August meeting, as there would need to be some work, I think, done on that. I'm wondering if staff can provide some advice or clarity on that, if that was a direction we wanted to pursue. You're not lighting up, so I don't know. Oh, okay, hold on. There you go. Okay.
So through the chair, so the current bylaw, shared accommodations, addresses both lodging houses and short-term rentals, and so it's not possible to just remove the short-term rental provisions. So if council would like more time, what staff recommend is that an alternative motion come forward, that staff report back at the August cycle with a lodging house bylaw that includes the enhanced enforcement and inspection provisions with a revised staffing complement, and remove the short-term rentals and report back at a later date with clear direction from council that they would like to see in a proposed short-term rental bylaw. So that allows you to still proceed with the lodging house, but defer the short-term rental.
Okay, thank you. That's helpful. Are there any other questions on this item? Councillor Chapman.
Yeah, just for further clarification on that, what aspects of the current lodging bylaw would we be approving? And what aspects of it are we deferring to August?
So tonight, you wouldn't be approving any of it because it's all encompassed in one bylaw. So staff would have to take it away, separate it out into two, and come back in August with the lodging house bylaw. That would be similar regulations to what you're seeing tonight. We would just separate them out, short-term rental versus lodging house.
And about as far as the distancing of lodging houses, would that be something we'd be passing today?
Yes.
Okay, so is that the only thing we'd be passing today as far as lodging houses are concerned?
Go ahead.
So through the mayor, there are several recommendations that are on the floor today. One is related to an official plan amendment to remove minimum distance separation policies from the official plan. The second is a zoning bylaw amendment to do the same, as well as permit lodging houses citywide and establish different regulatory frameworks for lodging houses citywide. In addition to that, there's an updated licensing framework for lodging houses. Pending council's decision, those decisions would happen on each of the separate instruments in front of council this evening. So the official plan amendment, the zoning bylaw amendment, and then the lodging house or the shared accommodation bylaw.
So if I can summarize what I think we're hearing is the official plan and the zoning bylaw could move forward today. The licensing piece would need to come back and potentially be split up based on that, with the part relating to the licensing of lodging houses we would deal with at the August meeting, and the part related to the short-term rentals we would deal with whatever time frame and things we want you to follow up on. We would say. Is that a good
Correct.
summary of it all? Okay. That help, Councillor Chapman?
Yeah, I guess just one more question, if I may. So, I don't know, can staff sort of tell us what you would do with the short-term rentals, the Airbnbs, et cetera? You know, do you see that there's a lot that you would change in what we already have before us?
Staff are proposing to move forward with the framework that's in front of you this evening. I don't think there's any merit to making changes to the short-term rental components. We have revised a lot of the regulations to date based on feedback that we have received, and the bylaw that we're proposing is the least restrictive short-term rental bylaw within various municipalities.
Right. Okay, thank you.
Councillor Stretch. Actually, you've already spoken. Councillor Deneau.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. What degree of dialogue occurred with the Airbnb community prior to the last meeting, 2 meetings, I guess?
There was community engagement for well over a year relating to the lodging house and short-term rental accommodation with various groups, lodging house owners, Airbnb owners, host platforms, Conestoga Students Inc., House of Friendship, Lived Experience Working Group, Housing for All were all consulted during this process. There was an Engage WR survey that was also published that had 597 participants on that survey were all taken into account, and feedback was taken, and the regulations presented tonight were based on that feedback.
Okay, and correct me if I'm wrong, anybody who engaged in this process, not all of them were necessarily Airbnb hosts or owners. Some of them were people from the community, neighbors and stuff like that. Is that what I'd like to believe as well?
Yep, that's correct.
Okay. I'm going to pivot to another area. So all businesses in the city of Kitchener that operate have to have a license. Am I correct?
The majority of businesses, yes.
Okay. And those businesses, are most of them required to have insurance outside of their own personal insurance?
Yes.
Do we ask businesses when they're obtaining a license to show that they have insurance on that, on their business?
As part of the application process, they would have to provide us proof of insurance that meets the requirements.
So is business, you may not know this, but is business insurance separate from like personal insurance?
It is, yes.
Okay. Okay, that's all. Thank you.
Councillor Singh, you haven't spoken yet. Go ahead.
Yeah, 2 questions. One for Ms. Fusco. A little confused. So from what I heard in your explanation that the short-term rental bylaw can't be separated. So is that clear?
Go ahead, Ms. Fusco.
So through the chair, it can't be separated this evening. So if you only wanted to approve one aspect of the bylaw this evening, it is written to address both lodging houses and short-term rentals. So that's what I mean when I say it can't be separated out. If you only wanted to action one schedule, for example,
Okay.
certainly we can report back and we would be separating them out and you would be seeing a different bylaw come forward.
That would be coming in. That would be coming in August. But for the time being, there are some aspects of the bylaw that we can approve while deferring, right, regarding the minimum distancing and the updating of the bylaw. Can we not do that tonight?
So through the chair, the recommendation would be that you would be directing staff to return in August with the lodging house components of the bylaw, which is more restrictive than the current lodging house bylaw. And that bylaw would come forward in August, and then the short-term rentals would come at a later date.
Okay,
So
that's more
Councillor
clear.
Singh, we could tonight, we could approve the official plan portion.
Right.
We could approve the zoning bylaw portion, but we can't approve the licensing bylaw because it needs to be
Separated.
disentangled.
Right, okay, all right, good. It's just a matter of timing, not that it
Right.
can't be done.
Yep.
Okay, that's understood, thank you. The later question is regarding the insurance. That's helpful to know that all businesses do require insurance, all right? Most or all?
Most.
Okay, then you specify, then that, then that creates a sticking point. So where are some that don't require insurance? The type of businesses?
The majority of them do. So yes, we do require insurance for all business license applications.
Sorry, you said most and majority and not all. Is it all?
All.
Okay, thank you, because we want to make sure that it's clear for all of us. For the insurance then, now, I guess the hosts do operate through, in a partnership with Airbnb, and Airbnb has insurance I guess that does protect them as an operation, as an operator. Is that not sufficient, or why do staff feel that that's not sufficient?
Airbnb is not the only platform that short-term rentals are operating on. So there's Kijiji, Facebook Marketplace, Flipkey, Vrbo, Expedia, and every site, every host has different regulations. So we're trying to make one set of regulations that all need to comply with to keep it across the board.
So that's understandable, but again, you have one platform. Again, we have to start thinking, not to go into comment, we have new methods of operations of business, and technology creates that space. And this is the case, right? Decades past, we wouldn't be dealing with this problem, but this is the problem now. We have one operator like Airbnb that probably has more stringent guidelines and requirements and does have perhaps more adequate insurance, and others, as you said, don't. So could we not adjust our bylaw that does, if you are operating under Airbnb, that meets our guidelines and gives the protections that we would want to those guests, while everyone else would be required, or they could use any operator that has that insurance? I'm not saying we're advocating for Airbnb, but the very minimum, it has to meet the certain criteria. And if one provider does, great, and hopefully others will also if they want to compete.
Airbnb doesn't meet the requirement that we're asking for, and I'm not familiar with, some of the various other platforms, what they even offer. Also, if you're operating a rental property, you need insurance, the appropriate tenant insurance as well from your provider. It's required for your mortgage as well, I believe.
It does, and if they have a own home, so could that insurance be sufficient? That goes back to the other question about personal insurance. If they have home insurance, which in most cases they would that be adequate enough? But from what I'm hearing, the requirements is additional business insurance, additional liability insurance.
Yes, because what we're asking for is the $2 million liability insurance and to identify the city, and insurance companies then would classify that as commercial insurance.
Okay, so Mr. Mayor, I'll just leave this as a point. Perhaps that would be, if this is deferred, or part of it is deferred, that we get better clarification of what those costs are or how difficult it is to indemnify the city, and with the increased liability. That's not probably too hard, it's just the indemnifying the city of liability. So having that clarification would be helpful as well.
Okay, Councillor Johnson.
Yes, thank you. And through you, I'm wondering if you can give a definition of when a short-term rental would become something that would be covered under the Landlord-Tenant Act. Like, what I know that we've got 90 days on there. Perhaps you can comment on when that piece would kick in.
Sounds like a legal question.
Oh, is it?
Through the chair, I'd be careful about how I answer this question, because it could constitute legal advice.
Then that's okay. Sorry. So there's a reason why we have 90 days, why we have put 90 days into this.
So I will say that the Residential Tenancies Act, it excludes vacation rentals. And I think that there was a reason why we chose the 90 days, but I think that would constitute legal advice if I went into detail on that.
Thank you.
Councillor Davey. I haven't forgotten about you, Councillor Stretch.
Yeah, thank you. So I just wanted to clarify the insurance piece. Pardon me, because I read this and I must have misunderstood, but if we don't have a licensing bylaw at all for short-term rentals, then the city is not in any way liable for what happens as a result of that, correct?
Correct.
So because we're implementing or potentially implementing short-term rentals, we are introducing liability to the city for possibly, if it goes over $2 million, even with the recommendation?
So with all business licensing that we require insurance, because the city licenses something that opens us up to liability if something were to happen at a licensed premise. So having us on that insurance would cover the city in that regard.
Okay, thank you.
Before I go to, actually I'll go to Councillor Stretch and then I'll come to me. Go ahead, Councillor Stretch.
My question is around the four or less rooms, and I know that that there was a change between our last meeting and this meeting. Can you help give me some context over there being a maximum amount of rooms?
So through research, less than 5% of the available rentals had more than 4 bedrooms. Airbnb platform also confirmed that more than 4 bedrooms was not popular on their site outside of vacation areas such as somewhere like Whistler, and to make sure that we can cap the number of occupants for safety, nuisance control, and those issues as well.
Okay, so we're talking about less than 5% locally. Did I get that number right?
Yes,
Okay, so there's very few that offer that service.
correct.
Okay. Thank you. And then my other question is to, if you could help give me some context or help me understand how we differentiate the difference between a lodging home and someone who rents out a bedroom in their home.
So a lodging house is clearly defined that it has to be 5 occupants or more in a lodging house, and they're renting out individual rooms. There's different regulations. I think what you're referencing is one of the classes of a short-term rental, that they live in the property as their primary residence, and they just offer 1 room in their home as available for rent.
Okay, so they could offer up to 4 rooms in their house available for rent via Airbnb or any, any platform, as long as it was under 5 rooms.
So it would have to be a short-term accommodation. So a lodging house is a long-term accommodation, and it has to meet the lodging house definition. So you could rent up to the 5 rooms in a Airbnb or a short-term rental if you wanted to, but it has to meet the less than 90-day requirement.
Okay, so maybe I misunderstand a lodging home and how rent works there. Can you not rent a room for less than 90 days at a lodging home?
It's unlikely. It's meant to be a long-term rental where you have a lease agreement in place for each renter.
Okay, a long-term rental agreement.
Correct.
So are lodging home people, are they signing leases like over a year? I know they could, but is that the normal practice?
I don't know what the common practice is. A year is usually the length of a term lease, and then you could go month to month after your 1-year lease term.
Right. Okay. Does anyone on staff know the common practice with lodging homes? I know that's what, but is that how lodging homes, I was under the understanding that lodging homes works a little differently and that they tend to have a shorter monthly renting system.
Go ahead.
So through the mayor, I can't comment on that specifically, but a lodging home is a lease arrangement between the tenant and the landlord, and it is a lease arrangement between exclusive use of the bedroom, essentially, and the landlord. A lease arrangement, if a group of folks were renting out an entire rental accommodation together as a group, and the landlord, that is not a lodging home. So there's a nuance there between the type of lease agreement. For a short-term accommodation, there is no lease agreement that's regulated under the Residential Tenancies Act between the tenant and the landlord.
So, Councillor Stretch, I think that the difference being is that when the lease agreement exists, whether it's in a lodging home or a regular rental, the landlord-tenant relationship gets created, and the safety and provisions for both parties that exist in law kick in under those circumstances. When it's a vacation home, that relationship doesn't exist, and then it's really only the regulations that either might come through one of our bylaws or regulations that might come through Airbnb or someone like that regulate that.
Thank you, that's helpful. I'm just thinking through, protecting residents and their options for short-term rentals, and, if Airbnb is an option versus a lodging home at a certain price point, which offers the most protection to some of the more vulnerable renters. And yeah, that's really where I'm coming at it from, so thank you.
Okay, I don't see any other questions in the queue. I'm just going to ask a couple more, just going back on the insurance piece. So when you say earlier in terms of licensing, like most but not all businesses are licensed. Can you give us an example of businesses that wouldn't be licensed by, like would a retail operation without food and dairy or anything like that typically have a license from the city, like a clothing store or something like that?
Yes, it would be a permanent vendor.
Okay. So can you give us some examples of businesses that might not have a license from us?
We don't license like cannabis stores, for example, because those are provincially regulated. Would be an example.
That would be about it? Or?
Offhand, I can't think of, we do regulate most things. I can't think of anything offhand that stands out that we don't, that you wouldn't fall into one category or another.
Okay. And so anything that's licensed by us requires the city to be indemnified insurance-wise?
And that's come from the insurance pool, requesting that that's what we require.
Okay, and so then that becomes a direction that council can either adopt or not adopt in every circumstance, based on advice and how much risk they want to take, correct?
Yes, but that's how it's written in the bylaw. So I think if we're asking for insurance, the requirements need to be what the insurance pool says that we have to have, or don't ask for the requirement at all.
And do we, in terms of that insurance, is it consistent and the same in all instances? Like, are we asking for $1 million or $2 million or $5 million, or is it differ depending on the type of business we're talking about?
No, it's consistent across the board.
And it's $2 million?
Correct.
On everything?
Correct.
Okay. So we did hear that some other cities don't have that requirement. Hamilton, Toronto, Montreal were mentioned, although Hamilton, I wasn't quite clear. There was some reference to an amount around $1 million or something like that. Not 100% clear. Do you have any information on that?
So the majority of the municipal comparators that we researched did have some type of insurance requirement. Obviously, it's up to the individual municipality and their insurance pool regulations what they would deem to be appropriate.
So they may have, just like us, dealt with it and made an adjustment or not, perhaps.
Correct.
Okay. And the other question I have, with any regulatory regime, we're always trying to find this balance between the various competing forces that we're dealing with. Do we have a sense, for example, we heard from a number of delegations this evening around some of the, what I would call, vulnerable populations, i.e. new Canadians and so on, that come in that use this as an entry point for a shorter term accommodation while they find more permanent housing, which we know has been challenging and so on. Do we have a sense that if we lost the number of these Airbnb folks in this housing market at a time when we know there continue to be a significant number of new Canadians arriving in our community, how that might play out in terms of where those folks are going to go? Have we talked to YW, or, actually, no, I'm not going to mention YW, KW Multicultural Center, or Reception House, and some of those organizations, to understand the link between Airbnb and their rentals?
So we took some feedback, and most short-term rental bylaws capture rental periods between 28 and 30 days. So ours would be one of the first to go outside of that 28 to 30-day mark for being a short-term rental. So we took the feedback that some newcomers are here and they need somewhere temporary to stay while they settle. International students want to have their family to come and visit. So we came to the 90-day mark to have a medium between the both, but being careful that we're not venturing into the long-term rental market.
Okay. Thank you. Councillor Stretch, you have a follow-up question? Go ahead.
I'm full of questions tonight. So with the 90-day rental piece, is it possible for a renter to book for 90 days, have a good experience, and then rebook again for another 90 days after that?
No, so 90 days is the max period, so you're able to book 30 days, and then 30 days, and then 30 days, for a max of 90 days in total.
Okay. And then my second question is around the insurance. I'm trying to think through everything, and okay, so there's a difference between personal insurance and business insurance, and if we regulate this, people will have a license number. And so if they had personal insurance that was in excess of $2 million, could that qualify them to have enough insurance to proceed, or does it have to be classified as business insurance?
It's what the insurance providers are stating it needs to be. So as soon as we say, as the city, we're wanting that indemnity clause on it, that automatically kicks it into being commercial insurance, which is why that came into play. But that was the direction we got from the insurance pool, that is a requirement that the City of Kitchener currently uses.
Okay, and see, legal wants to jump in.
Through the chair, my understanding is that there are products on the market for short-term rental landlords, as well as landlord insurance, which are classified as a type of commercial insurance. So they should be able to achieve that $2 million mark, as well as the indemnity that we require.
Okay. Councillor Davey, you have a follow-up question?
Yeah, specifically on that, do we have any idea how much that costs?
I don't, and I think it varies insurance broker to insurance broker what their fees are.
Okay. And yeah, so that's an important bit of information as well, because I'm concerned about the costs escalating. But again, I just want to clarify too, because I think I heard this before, but if you sign up with Airbnb, for example, as part of their fees, they include insurance for that property. So in this situation, for anyone that's already with Airbnb, they would be covered there, but they have to pay double then, effectively, for insurance. Is that right?
Yeah, and I mean, I don't know the answer, and staff might be able to answer. I do remember that this was a topic of conversation when we first saw Uber come. I mean, we dealt with this at the region, and there was the issue of who was willing to insure, and I don't know, Aviva Brink, I probably shouldn't, but that seems to ring a bell, that they were somehow involved, and I think they linked up with Uber or something. I don't remember all the details, but yeah, it was complicated. That's all I remember.
So, but yes, so they would be doubly insured then, effectively.
Yes.
I think some of these questions would be better posed to the Waterloo Region Insurance Pool, who's our insurance provider. None of the staff members today are insurance experts, and so we wouldn't have those details on like costing and insurance products on the market, and we can give you our thoughts on it, but ultimately, I don't think there's somebody here who can specifically enter the details of the insurance policies and what policies given by Airbnb look like and whether they would be able to indemnify us and whether they would satisfy our insurance provider.
Okay, thank you.
So, Council, we've gone through all the questions. I think we've heard from staff. I mean, we have two options. One, deal with the whole thing today. The other would be to deal with the official plan and zoning frameworks today, have the licensing bylaw come back in August, and piece out potentially the short-term rentals piece, so some additional work can be done. I mean, I'm willing to get out of the chair, or if somebody else wants to do it, suggest that maybe what we do is divide it up and take that short-term rental piece, defer it to, later in the year, so that there can be some additional dialogue with the industry, engaged with them on some of the issues that have been raised. We can get some additional information on insurance and hear from the insurance pool as has been suggested, and some of the other issues that were raised today around. Our practice from a cost perspective is to try to recoup costs, but that's a council decision ultimately, and so I think that would give us some time to better understand some of those issues and have that come back later in the year. So, somebody wants to move that? Stephanie's willing to move something to that effect. So I guess just staff, do you need us to move these as three separate things, or do you want us to? Oh, you have. Look at this. They've already done this for us. You guys are good. Okay. So, Councillor Stretch. Ms. Fusco, you want to speak to this?
Thank you. Through the chair. So with respect to the alternative motion that's on the floor, that last clause there was the clause with respect to short-term rental provisions being deferred to a future date, and that would be the time for direction to be given. So you'd mentioned insurance and fees. So if there's any other items in the proposed bylaw that you would like us to engage with, we just want to be clear that we're engaging with the hosts, but also the tenants in the community on various aspects that need to be reported back on.
Yeah, and I think we heard of a number of concerns today. But actually, I'll let others speak first. And Councillor Stretch, you were making this amendment potentially, so...
Yes, I think another thing I'd like to revisit is the number of rooms, especially if, to look at that as, I think, that's possibly with the extra insurance, the business insurance, that could be up to the decision of, I guess, the owner. Is that exactly how we would state that?
Okay, you want that looked at as well? Okay. So I'll come back to you in case there's some other suggestions that come forward, and you can decide if you want them as amendments or as part of your motion. I'm just trying to keep this moving along. Councillor Chapman, you were next.
Yeah, I just wonder if we set a date rather than a future date, like maybe September. I don't know, and staff would be able to
So
have this.
I'd suggested by the end of the year, and that gives flexibility. But you can go earlier. I think just recognizing we're into summer holidays, trying to get people together, it might be a little difficult to do it for September.
Yeah, I'm not, it doesn't have to be September. I just think it'd be better if we set a date, like a month anyway.
So by the end of the year.
So October.
And it could be earlier if staff, get the work done. And okay. Councillor Schneider, you're next in the queue.
Thank you, Mayor Vanovich. I'd like to look into the 90-day limit. I'm just concerned, we've heard some of the delegations mention that newcomers are using Airbnb as a landing spot in hopes of finding a more permanent home, and 90 days might be a little restrictive of that. I'm hoping that maybe that could be rolled over in a case like that where they haven't found a permanent residence yet.
Councillor Singh?
Yeah, I think we'll have an opportunity to engage in that discussion. I think it's helpful for us to get that answer. I would have some concern a little bit. Again, we don't want to, diminish the rights of tenants effectively. If they're living that long, they're more tenants than short-term occupants. The other thing is regarding I think there's a tenant charter or a charter for lodging home that doesn't necessarily apply. We heard from the delegates. I mean, it's tough to really express exactly what the charter would be. It would be for short-term rentals, and don't really understand the added benefit of having that posted in the specified space. Additionally, the contact information or the address. I think there was some requirements for collection of the occupants. So perhaps seeing how we can better manage that, or the necessity of that information, that may be helpful too.
Go ahead.
That section was already removed from the bylaw.
Okay, all right, that's good. And yeah, the insurance, I think the others have said it, potentially getting confirmation that existing home insurance, as long as it indemnifies the City of Kitchener, if that's sufficient to cover us, so that there's not added business insurance that's required on top, and that's really where the added cost would come in as well. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Singh. Councillor Davey?
Should we comment as well?
If you want to at this point. Maybe just before you do, and I think it was sort of notionally said, but in that list, as part of the deferral, is to allow for further engagement with all stakeholders. So just to reference that.
Yeah, right, so, yeah, comment. First, I'd actually ask, after I've been reflecting on a lot of the delegations you've had today, I'm going to ask if we can vote on the last paragraph separately. I've come to the conclusion that I don't think this is the right time for us to be looking at short-term rental bylaw. And there's, I guess when I look at even the number of items that we're asking staff to look at again, we're talking about changing the number of rooms, we're talking about changing the number of days. I'm concerned about the timing of this, and frankly, we have an unhealthy vacancy rate for rentals in Waterloo region, and this certainly will not help with respect to that. We're not really sure what the insurance costs would be, but I wouldn't be surprised to find out the insurance costs plus the licensing fees. We could add, $40 or $50 a month, which will turn right back on to the people that are renting these, because it's going to be added to the rent. And when we have people visiting the food bank, et cetera, that seems like a small amount of money to us, but to those people it's significant. What also concerns me is some delegates have said that this may push them in a direction where they may not rent at all. They may sell their property or convert it to a single family, et cetera, which again would worsen the supply. I just don't think it's the right time. Staff did some great work on this, but I guess at the end of the day, the specific part of the bylaw feels to me like our attempt at the cure is worse than the disease. So it's something I think we might want to revisit when we've addressed the housing supply situation across the country.
Okay. Other comments? Councillor Singh.
Yeah, I don't want Councillor Davey to be the outliner and him expressing his opinion. I think this is something that's necessarily shared by a lot of us. I think he's just articulated it well. Although having better protection, ensuring that we are necessarily having a better idea where these type of rentals are. Again, if the regulations make it too difficult to operate and the cost to go up, at the end of the day, they are providing a form of housing. And for the longest time, we keep on championing that we need, cross-board of spectrum of housing options. Well, guess what? This is one of them. And if they're already facing, through the competition and competitiveness, and it's getting harder for them to find find guests, as well as to compete with the other operators. I think adding regulations that would be onerous, I think we're doing a disservice at a time where we want a greater availability of housing options. That being said, I think it's okay for us to get a broad idea of consultation, not to say that we didn't go far enough, but again, through this exercise, apparently there's enough additional questions or additional concerns that maybe weren't as well articulated through the forums, through the discussion. So maybe additional engagement will help us to get to that in-between middle of where the operators feel comfortable and where we feel secure that we are safeguarding the residents that are occupying that space, and also alleviating the concerns of our overall residents, which have some concerns about short-term rentals and happening in their neighborhoods. So having that extra information gives us a better idea of if this, as Councillor Davey, you have said it, if this is the time, or perhaps we need to delay it further. But I think we're making the right choice to defer, to not rush this, but get it right the first time.
Okay. Councillor Chapman.
Yeah, thank you. I just want to say that it's unfortunate that the lodging licensing bylaw is being postponed because of this, but I'm pleased to see it coming back in August. And I will support the deferral of the rest of the provisions here, because I think, it will be, we've heard from the residents, and I think it's important to go back to the table. I guess that's all I'll say, but yeah, I really would like to see the lodging house licensing go forward sooner than later, so thank you.
Okay, those are all the people in the queue. I'll just make a few comments. So first of all, I want to thank staff for all of the work that's been done on this, both from the planning side and the licensing side, and both in terms of lodging houses as well as the work and the thinking that's been done around short-term rentals. I think it's important to remember that this has come forward based on the broad range of input and feedback that staff have obtained through council, through the public, through people in the industry and so on, to try to put forward what they felt was the best balanced approach in terms of dealing with each of these various areas. Ultimately, it then becomes council's responsibility on a night like tonight to hear any additional final input and to balance all that out and decide, hey, do we need to make some adjustments or some tweaks, or perhaps put it on hold for a period of time. I am prepared to, first of all, to support the zoning and the official plan amendments, and I'll actually deal with those first, and then I'll come to this piece, because I think that's the critical element that we want to get past tonight. And then we can deal with this one, and as has been requested by Councillor Davey, we'll deal with that third paragraph last. I would suggest if the third paragraph isn't successful, that just kind of leaves it hanging. And so what I think we would need to do is that we simply say that we take no action at this time, if that's ultimately the will of council, on the short-term piece, so that we actually are at least leaving it open to come back at some point in the future. However, I personally will be supporting the deferral at this time, because I do think that a lot of good work has been done, and a lot of good input from the delegations who have come this evening has, I think, even better informed the process that potentially we'll see something come forward by the end of the year. And at that time, it'll be council's decision to say, is the time right, or do we need to move it forward further? I understand where Councillor Davies coming from and understand some of those concerns. but I also understand what we're trying to achieve in terms of, some of the quality issues. But for me, some of the compelling things I heard is how do we make this continue to be viable? This is being, done as a way to make sure that folks in the community who might otherwise not have access to housing are having their needs met. We're trying to make sure it's happening safely, and we're trying to make sure it's financially viable, because also nobody's going to do this if at the end of the day it's going to cost them more money than they're bringing in. And for some people, particularly with what's happened with mortgage rates and so on, it means we're keeping people in their homes that otherwise might not be able to do that. And that for me is pretty compelling right now, because the alternatives aren't great if that wasn't the case. So that's where we're at. So I will deal with the two planning pieces first. And Councillor Singh, you want to move those, and they would be seconded by Councillor Chapman. So that's the official plan and the zoning bylaw pieces. Everyone clear on that? So those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Now we'll deal with the first two paragraphs in this. It's been moved by Councillor...
Mayor?
Sorry?
My apologies. I just need to clarify. I just want a little bit of confirmation on the potential tenant charters. It was raised about the removal of a tenant, sorry, my apologies, the removal of a tenant renter code. So I just want to confirm that the wording that I have on the screen related to the potential tenant charters is accurate as stated a few minutes ago.
Well, yeah, I will, as soon as my mouse cooperates. There we go. Councillor Singh. Oh, thank you.
Yeah, not necessarily the removal. I think a better, clear explanation of the requirement. I think there was one that was referenced for the lodging homes, and there was a delegate that expressed concern related to that. I think further explanation may be helpful of seeing the necessity of having something similar of what's required in a lodging home and for the same in a short-term rental.
So as it's listed as potential tenant charters / code, are we acceptable with the wording?
Yeah.
Okay. We don't have a seconder, and I'm just confirming all the amendments we're going to refer as part of the main motion.
Councillor Stretch, this is your motion?
The whole thing?
This is your whole motion. We'll deal with third paragraph separately, and I do need a seconder. Moved by Councillor Singh. Thank you. So I'll deal with the first two paragraphs first. Those in favor? Those opposed? That's carried. And then the third paragraph, those in favor? Those opposed? That is carried as well. So there we have it, and we'll deal with the bylaw portion in August, and on the short-term rental provisions, we'll be in touch. So thank you to all of the delegations that not only participated, but even came back to be here live and in person for 7 o'clock. So thank you very much. Okay, I'll now deal with item 6.4, since we already dealt with that delegation, and that was Mr. Negoslav Radulovic with respect to 91 Madison Avenue South. Councillor Michaud or Councillor Chapman? I think it's your ward, Councillor Chapman. Do you want to speak to it?
Well, I have some questions for staff.
Okay, please go ahead. They're coming.
Yeah. So my first question is, the delegate said that the property was not listed. I just want a clarification on that.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I can confirm that the property is listed. It was put on our municipal heritage ledger in 2014.
Okay. And my other question had to do with, in the Heritage Committee, we often get requests for changing windows, for example. And I think the committee is, well, maybe you can speak better to this, but the committee, I think, is pretty willing to work with the owners to ensure that, maybe the windows aren't wood frames, they might be aluminum frames because it's less expensive, and and the work is easier to complete, right? Can you maybe speak to that a bit?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, a property that is designated is required to go through a heritage permit application process. That is a process that we currently do not collect a fee for, and we offer that service free of charge to help owners be able to undertake a heritage review of their property. That heritage permit application is a subjective review by heritage staff with advice from a heritage committee at what is a reasonable replacement or a reasonable change to a designated heritage building. There is a common misconception that heritage designation means that replacement must be the exact same, and that is not the case. In fact, often the heritage permit application will look at the impacts of what a similar or a alternative feature would be and what impacts that would have. And our heritage committee, as well as staff, have supported alternatives where it is not feasible to replace an exact likeness. I know that our heritage planning staff have spoken with the delegate and understand there is concern about the replacement of the windows. We have changed the proposed wording within the designating bylaw to specifically address that windows don't have to be a replacement but similar, which is a more effective and less expensive replacement option for the owners.
Right, and what about doors? I think he also mentioned doors.
Through Mr. Mayor, the same is true for doors or any alterations. Exact replacement is not required. We work together with the applicant to find a reasonable replacement that does not take away from the attributes of the resource.
So I mean, what we're really designating here is the structure itself and the intricate parts of the outside of the building, because I understand that we're not looking at the inside features at all.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that is correct. The outside of the building, because this property and the building, its use, its historic use, the fact that it was the architectural style, one of the first synagogues within Kitchener, it meets 6 of the 9 criteria. So it's more than just the building. Its contextual value is important. It tells a story of faith within our community, the transition of neighborhoods and community, and it's important that that story is told. The designation bylaw does talk about some of those attributes, and it does not include anything on the interior. So any interior renovations would not require a heritage permit application.
Okay, and I guess my last question, if I may. So based on the delegation today, I didn't get the sense that they're talking about demolishing and rebuilding. If they chose to, as many churches are, chose to build an addition on the back to add housing, I'm not sure how big the lot is or even if that's feasible. That's still an option.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, yes, and we have many religious institutions that are designated within the city of Kitchener. Actually 2 of them have been converted to supportive housing. So heritage designation does not mean no change. In fact, many of the buildings, their use and sometimes their appearance does change and alter over time, and there are opportunities. Again, designation is often perceived as meaning no change, and that's not true. It's an extra layer review based on the significance. I will also point out that a property that is designated qualifies for our Heritage Grant program, so there is actually financial assistance that could be made available should work be undertaken to change a structure.
Okay, well, I'll just say that it's a beautiful building, and I would support the designation. So, thank you.
Okay. Well, either you or Councillor Chapman is, sorry. You are Councillor Chapman. Either you or Councillor Michaud, as members of the committee, should bring it forward. Councillor Chapman?
Yeah, I would move that we accept the staff report and that we designate this property.
Okay. Is there a seconder? Councillor Michaud? Any discussion? All those in favor?
Mr. Mayor?
Oh, yeah.
It would be very appreciative if you add an additional clause to the recommendation requesting that the bylaw be added to the agenda for first, second, and third reading. The clause was missed, and the bylaw is attached to the report for Council's review.
Okay, and that was part. I heard Councillor Chapman say that when she made the motion. So and Councillor Michaud did second that, in fact. Those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Thank you. We'll now move on to reports of the committees. Heritage Kitchener, we still have to deal with the rest of that? No? You're moving it? Councillor Michaud, seconded by Councillor Chapman? Okay, yeah, sure. I was just trying to help a little. Okay. Okay, thank you. Moved and seconded. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Oh no, there's more of them there. Sorry, that was. Did you move all of them, or just Lancaster? Okay, you did move all of them. Okay. No, we did that one already. Yeah. Yep. Okay, so I'll move to Councillor Davey and Finance Committee.
Thank you. It's been moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Deneau that the 4 items from Finance and Corporate Services Committee be adopted. I would note the most high-profile item of that would be the Brom Yards. There is a bit of a change from what's written in the report. It was just more of a misunderstanding error in terms of understanding the criteria for the RFP. It originally in here was written as if they're going to have that today, which would be pretty much impossible, but that they will bring it back before they go public.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Chapman?
Okay, so what we're saying is that we're not going to go ahead with the RFP at this point? Like, why don't we just remove that clause from here?
Councillor Davey?
Right. So the only difference is that I think there was a misunderstanding when this was written that staff was going to come back with all the criteria tonight. So what they're just saying is no, but they're going to come back with the criteria before they go forward with the RFP.
So it will come to us?
It will come back to us, yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. And there is a conflict on this item that Councillor Singh has identified. So Councillor Davey, moved by yourself, seconded by Councillor Deneau. Thank you. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Yes, it's with the noted conflict. Okay, we'll now move on to planning and strategic. I think everyone's ready for the summer break. Councillor Singh, planning and strategic initiatives. Sorry.
Thank you. I'll just break it up into 2 days. The June the 3rd, I will move it myself and seconded by Councillor Chapman. And then the later items in June the 17th, I think I'll allow her to key in, and because I wasn't present in that meeting. So items as noted for coming arising from Planning and Strategic Initiatives Committee from June the 3rd.
Just bear with me 1 second. Okay, so those are basically the delegated authority for town purchases and the cycling and trails master plan spot fixes. The other 2 items we've already dealt with.
Yes, right.
Okay, so those in favor, opposed, that's carried. And now we'll deal with June 17th, and I will just remind Council of the written submissions that have been received from Leslie McCready and Sally Guns on 7.4.d. So back to you, Councillor Singh.
Yeah, I'll actually have Councillor Chapman, as she chaired that meeting, for her to second for her to move, and then seconded by someone else. As I mentioned, I'm declaring conflict on 7.4.d, the rental placement bylaw.
Okay, do you want us to just deal with that one separately then?
Okay, all right. So on all the items, moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Chapman, except for 7.4.d.
Which is moved by Councillor Chapman and seconded by Councillor Davey.
Okay.
So I will deal with 7.4.A.B.C first. Any discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. And now we'll deal with 7.4.D. Don't make me hold your arms down. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Thank you. Unfinished business? New business? Nothing. Mayoral business and updates. I'm actually going to deal with that one right at the end, just in regards to Canada Day. since I didn't do that at the beginning, so we'll just leave that till the end of the meeting. And we'll now move on to notices of motion and Councillor Deneau and automatic external defibrillators.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Do you want me to just read the last preamble?
The operative phrases, sure.
Yeah, so just be it further? That good?
Yep, start with your, therefore be it resolved.
Okay, therefore be it resolved that Kitchener City Council calls on the Government of Ontario to require the installation of AED automated external defibrillators in all workplaces within Ontario with 50 or more employees or another suitable number as determined by the province, and be it further resolved that a copy of this motion be forwarded to the Premier of Ontario, the Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing, area members of Provincial Parliament, municipal and regional councils within Waterloo Region, and the Association of Municipalities of Ontario. So I just want to thank Michael May for helping work with me on this and doing the research, or his staff doing the research, and I just think it's important because not many places have AED devices, and just one in a facility, why it might not be used in a 6-month or a year period. I think it's important to have those accessible. Most healthcare places, surprisingly enough, don't have them in their workplaces. And so I think it's imperative that, as our population ages, whether it's, visitors coming to long-term care with elderly parents or elderly spouses, or people going into to other workplaces where they're performing, strenuous work. We don't know when we're going to have a heart or cardiac arrest. And so I think, having one of these in workplaces, I think if we can have the government provide some support through some programs to allow employers to place these in their workplaces, I think it's an important thing to do, and I'm looking for council support.
Okay. Sorry, I didn't catch. Did you have a seconder for that one? Councillor Johnson, I see.
Yep.
Okay, thank you. Any further discussion? Councillor Stretch.
Around there being a defibrillator here at City Hall or at COF, do we have them?
Yep. It's down by security, and I know I've seen them in the COF. I can't remember exactly where.
Great.
Okay. Actually, they're probably in a number of our buildings. I'm guessing the Odd and others as well. Yeah. Yep. Okay. So, motion's been made and seconded. All those in favour? Opposed? That's carried. Thank you, Councillor Deneau, for bringing that forward. Councillor Schneider and arts funding.
Thank you, Mayor. I think that we've all been keenly aware of the arts funding in our region with what's recently happened with the museum and earlier with the symphony. And I think, we're doing our part here as much as we can at the City of Kitchener to fund our arts organizations. It's a big part of our Make It Kitchener 2.0, but we're simply not getting our fair share of arts funding. Canada Council for the Arts currently is at $360 million, but that's down from $500 million during the pandemic. That $360 million is proposed to be reduced further by $3.6 million in 2024-25, $7.3 million in 2025-26, $9.88 million in 26-27. So I think it's important that we send a request to the federal government and the Canada Council for the Arts that this funding be restored, and that there's a better funding, more equitable funding for municipalities and regions. For example, our region, Kitchener, Waterloo, Cambridge, we received per capita funding of about $3.39 per person, while Montreal, Vancouver, and Winnipeg received $18.30 per person. That's more than 5 times what we received here. So I don't feel that's equitable. I understand that bigger cities may need more funding, but I think it'd be a little more fair. So the motion is there, and I'll just, I think I've explained quite a bit of it there, but the resolutions are, therefore be it resolved, the Kitchener City Council requests the Department of Canadian Heritage to increase funding to the Canada Council for the Arts and to amend the Canada Council for the Arts Act to mandate a regional development agency funding model, and therefore it be finally resolved that letters of support for these changes be sent to the Honourable Pascal Saint-Onge, Minister of Canadian Heritage and Members of Parliament for Waterloo Region.
Thank you, Councillor Schneider. And do we have a seconder for that? Councillor Stretch? There we go. I have people in the queue. Councillor Singh. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just keyed into, I think, recognize and thank Councillor Schneider for bringing this to light. This is an ongoing issue that we continue to grapple with, of figuring out solutions. And as much as I really do want the region to step up and do a little more of their share, because I think the city of Kitchener, more than any in this region, goes above and beyond when it's to do with arts and culture. There is only a limited capacity and ability to do so through a very antiquated taxation system where we're collecting through our property taxes, which are really there to take care of very core services, you know, the parks, the potholes, and roads. We, I think, go outside of, you know, our ability when it comes to economic development, when it comes to supporting the various, you know, community groups in our communities, as well as the arts and culture communities to support them. But at the end of the day, I think every city, every resident nationally, I think has a right to be enriched through arts and culture. So as Councillor Schneider has said, it should not be just major metropolitan areas and some cities while others struggle and get by. We don't get by, we do better, but we can do far better. And that in part plays into economic development, talent retention, and overall just improving the quality of life of our residents. I think that's really what we're asking for. Give ours our fair share. So thank you for Councillor Schneider for making that ask.
Councillor Johnson?
Yes, thank you. And I just wanted to thank Councillor Schneider as well. The arts are so incredibly important to our community. As Councillor Singh was saying, you know, it's such an important part of economic development. We hear all the time from Communitech, the Accelerator Center, different groups saying, we need things to keep people here after hours. This is so incredibly important. And also, arts are what makes our lives nice. You know, it's the old saying, bread and roses, and it's important to bring the roses part to our lives, and that's really what the arts do. And frankly, whenever I travel places, we were just in Calgary, and you see all the important and great arts initiatives and public spaces and art and initiatives and that are going on elsewhere, and we need to be doing that here too. And it's really, really important. It's not fluff. It's the piece that makes life enjoyable. So thank you, Councillor Schneider. Happy to support you in this and really appreciate you doing this.
Thank you, Councillor Johnson. Councillor Davey.
Yeah, thank you. Pretty much everything I wanted to say has been said. I just wanted to, again, highlight the thank you to Councillor Schneider. She talked about this earlier. We've lost one of our key cultural institutions and are in danger of losing a second. That's when this discussion started, and Councillor Schneider said that he would look into it and bring it forward as it's squarely within our jurisdiction to be asking for and dealing with. And I do think it's notable that, you know, it's when you have an urban center that's already massive and is at the same time collecting a multiple 5 times per capita what they're getting. It's not fair. Like, it's really not fair. So I'm glad it was brought forward. And as Councillor Johnson said, yeah, we need some fun, entertaining, cool arts things too. And I hope that this resonates with the ears and levels of government above us.
Great, thank you. Those are all the comments. Just briefly, I do want to thank you, Councillor Schneider, for bringing this forward. I know we've had the opportunity to talk about this, and I mean, you know, some of this reality, unfortunately, goes back to the work that was done back with the Creative Enterprise Initiative and trying to not only level things up within the region, which it did for a period of time, but also start to level up investments in arts and culture, both across the country and provincially. And this kind of gap between us and some of the larger urban centres certainly has existed for a while, and I think the kind of motion that you brought forward here certainly helps us address this. I think at a future meeting we may want to actually, after doing a little bit more work, want to do a similar motion provincially, because there's a role that's played by the Ontario Arts Council as well, and I would suspect that some of the per capita differences that we're seeing, while maybe not as high, are likely quite significant as well. So with that, we can do a recorded vote if you'd like. Sure. One last time maybe with the system. Listen, it served us well. It's over 30 years old. It lasts longer than a laptop from... It's unanimous. Thank you. Okay, we'll now go on to Councillor Chapman, your motion on renoviction legislation request. Go ahead.
It's pretty long. Like, do you really want me to read all the therefores?
No, you don't have to.
Well, I'm happy to. Should I, Clerk?
I will leave that. Yeah, you can just speak to it.
Okay, I'll speak to it because it is quite extensive. So what you have before you is a motion that was passed by the City of Toronto in July of 2022, calling on the province to make adjustments to the Planning Act and different aspects of the Landlord-Tenant Tribunal Board, etc. And so it's I mean, we all know the problems that we have here with renovictions. They're ongoing. And I know staff is working on trying to come up with a renoviction bylaw. And what this motion would do is, you know, just facilitate that whole process. In October 2021, we did pass a motion to call on staff to work on a renoviction bylaw. So again, what this motion does is it gives more details on what that would look like and what things the province would have to adjust and introduce to make our job easier, really. And, you know, I was just thinking as I was putting together this motion or thinking about what I was going to say here today, you know, it's not only the big renovictions that we're aware of, like 250 Frederick Street and 267 Traynor, but what's happening also there are two cases that I noticed just recently in the last month where you've got an apartment building with 12 units and the owner comes along and says, okay, we're going to turn those 12 units into 18 units. So to do that, they're taking 2-bedroom apartments and turning them into 1-bedroom apartments. So people are being renovicted for that sort of adjustment as well. So I think that there's a real need to see this happen, and I commend Toronto for the detailed motion that they brought forward, and I'm hoping that we can support that, as well as other cities around the province. I asked staff if they knew of any other cities, and they didn't have that information at this point. I do thank staff for the support with this, for reviewing it, and for, you know, acknowledging that, yes, this is maybe a good thing. So so I hope I can count on your support on this.
Okay.
And I know it would bode well with Acorn and all of the, you know, the people that have come to us to advocate on this, along these lines.
Is there a seconder for the motion? Councillor Deneau? Any questions, comments? Councillor Schneider?
Just questions of staff. We've just passed our own rental replacement bylaw, so I'm wondering what this would mean with regards to that.
Go ahead.
So through the mayor, this motion we see as an advocacy motion that would be in companion to what council approved earlier this evening about a rental replacement bylaw.
Okay. Councillor Johnson?
Yes, thank you. And it doesn't preclude us from bringing something forward on our own in the future as well. So I'm thinking that that's certainly the direction that we also want to go into. Thank you.
Councillor Davey?
Yes, thank you. And I guess like staff has seen this, but they haven't provided a report. It's a councillor's motion, I guess. I'm just curious. There's a lot of things here I don't fully understand the implications of, but one of my concerns is, I guess I'll put it this way. I've heard a lot of anecdotal people that would otherwise be interested in renting, frankly, that don't because of the challenges to be a landlord, especially a landlord where you're only renting a small number of units, and you're exposed to the backlog of the landlord-tenant board, and et cetera. So I guess my question is, I guess, and maybe staff doesn't want to comment, I'm not sure, but I'm worried that this will make it more onerous or more difficult for people that actually are interested in renting. It might scare them away. Could staff comment on that?
Ms. Bustamante?
Through the chair, staff don't have any comment on that at this time.
Okay. Yeah, and that's fair, and that's what I expected. And I just want to be clear too, I don't, like, to be honest, there's so many clauses in here, and without the benefit of staff looking at it and providing input, I don't really feel like I fully understand what I'm voting on in terms of what the wider, broader implications might be. As I said earlier with the previous item, you know, we have an unhealthy amount of rental vacancy in our region, and I'm always concerned about making it more difficult to rent. And we did just pass a rental replacement bylaw. This evening, we did pass a rent eviction advocacy piece earlier on. I think it's time to sort of let some things percolate and see if the province responds to what we've already done before we add on. So I think I'm not going to support it this evening.
Councillor Deneau?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and I appreciate all the comments around the horseshoe that have been said about this motion. I will support it. You know, it's a start. People in our community are looking for us, albeit we don't have jurisdiction over rent evictions. We are elected to represent our community, and we have a voice at the table. We have the ability to meet with our local MPPs and our MPs more so than some other groups do in the city. And so I think it's inherently important that we show our city that we do take this serious, because it is a serious risk to many people losing their home, many people being kicked out from the place that they call home, that they've lived for 20 or 25 years. And so, you know, I trust in our staff that with this advocacy motion and other literature that they will read over the next little while, that they will come up with a solution that is best for the City of Kitchener, as we've seen them do so far over the last year with protecting our residents and some of our most vulnerable in our community. And so, again, I will be supporting this motion.
Okay. Councillor Davey?
Yeah, sorry, just on second thought, like, there's a better option for me, because there certainly are parts of this motion that I do understand that I am supportive of, that I don't want to vote against. I'm not going to break them all out, so my third option would be to simply leave the room and not vote on it, so that's what I will choose to do.
So, well, before you do that, I do have one question. So, like, have staff haven't had a chance to review this in any significant way yet, Ms. Bustamante?
So through the chair, so staff have read the wording of this motion prior to tonight. However, there are a lot of implications and a lot of points contained within the motion, and so staff haven't had the benefit of going through each of the bullets and sub-bullets to understand all the details in great length yet.
So here's my question, Councillor Chapman. If somebody were to hypothetically move a motion to defer this to special council on our August committee day, that would give staff an opportunity to at least take a look at this, and maybe, I'm not asking for, a broad 15-page report, but just to see if there's any red flags or anything, or make any suggested tweaks working with Councillor Chapman. And then we could at least consider it then prior to going to AMO, and any meetings we might get, and it could form, part of our advocacy. But there is a lot here, and I think I too would be a little more comfortable if we could take a look at this. I see Mr. Reedman.
Through the mayor, so this is very similar to a motion that was brought forward in Toronto by a council member, and so this really is a political advocacy motion between one level of government and another, and so I don't think planning staff would necessarily weigh in on a lot of the advocacy side of this, unless there's staff that, that work on the advocacy team that would want to review this. But from a planning staff perspective, this is really about matters with another jurisdiction of government.
No, I understand that, but I guess where I'm going with it is, I mean, it ultimately would become a position of the city. And so I think we would want to make sure it's not, that it's aligned with, the policy positions that we've already passed and so on, and not going in a, in a significantly different direction. And so, that input could come from the policy team, like the advocacy team, as well as, planning staff taking a look at it. There's not a huge amount of rush. I mean, the House isn't sitting right now, and so I'm just thinking it might be helpful for staff to look at it and that might bring comfort to council. Your mic is still on, Mr. Reedman.
Through the mayor, and so staff, had looked at it. We had a couple days to take a quick look at it. It is factually similar to what Toronto passed, but really this is about dealing with the province and their jurisdiction at the landlord-tenant tribunal, and so I'm not sure what further staff would add in terms of commentary around what these recommendations are.
Okay, that's fine. Thank you. Councillor Deneau?
Yeah, I'm going to plead a little ignorance here. But in my time, I've always assumed that we had to at least run any motions that we were bringing forward, not necessarily run past staff, but at least give them, some heads up in time to kind of dissect it. And that's what happened? Yeah? Okay. Okay, so once, yeah, okay. All right, I didn't get that sense from, okay, all right.
Councillor Stretch.
Yes, I'll move to defer this until August 2024.
Okay, before I take that motion, I will let Councillor Chapman speak.
To the deferral?
Well, you were in the queue,
Yeah,
so
no,
I'm letting you...
I mean, I think we have to think of this as supporting a motion that's already out there, that's calling on the province to do these things. Staff is saying that, you know, that because it's an advocacy motion, they're not going to do anything more with it than this, even if we defer it. So I guess the thing is, you know, are we willing to call on the province to do its job? And that's basically what this is asking for. So I understand that your request for the deferral, I don't think that that's really where we should be, what we should be doing with this. And I'd also call for a recorded vote at some point when the time comes.
Okay. Just, Councillor Chapman, have you had any dialogue with the advocacy team and so on around any of this?
With the people in Toronto?
No, our advocacy team here at the city.
Which one? Acorn?
No.
Staff?
Yes.
No.
Sloan and Justin?
No,
Not this Justin, the other
I
Justin.
shared it with staff.
Okay, just the
Yeah.
planning staff?
Yeah.
Okay.
And the clerk's office.
Okay, and so that's maybe a procedural thing that internally we probably should work on, just in terms of getting folks' input. It just, I think, would help to make sure that, you know, we're giving full consideration to things. Councillor Johnson.
And please.
Okay. So there is a motion to defer. Is there a seconder for the motion to defer? Who moved the motion to defer?
Stephanie did.
Stephanie. Councillor Schneider is you're seconding it, and so it would come back at special council in August. Okay? That's the motion that's on the floor right now. To defer it so that there could be some additional dialogue, including with the advocacy team and so on, just to make sure that this is aligned with our advocacy positions and so on, and you know, not taking us in a different direction. I'm not sure that, you know, folks have had an opportunity to review it in that context. So that's the motion that's on the floor, and a recorded vote has been requested. So deferral to the August meeting date, committee meeting date. And that carries. Okay. Questions and answers. Bylaws. Madam Clerk, are there late starters?
Through the chair, there are a number of late starters that were listed on the agenda. I will just refer to the items that have changed. And so 11.2C, the bylaw for shared accommodations, is not going forward. And as noted earlier, we're adding a bylaw for 91 Madison Avenue.
Okay. Somebody want to move them? First and second reading? Somebody? Councillor Davey, seconded by Councillor Michaud. Any discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. It is moved by Councillor Johnson that we resolve ourselves into committee of the whole. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Councillor Johnson, over to you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor. To address the appointment, we'll move to administrative reports. To address the appointment of the licensing tribunal, and if there's no objection, I will address that matter first. Seeing none, can I please have 3 volunteers to be appointed to the licensing appeal tribunal, as well as a mover for the item? Councillor Deneau? You're moving it?
Do you know when the hearing will be likely be held? Approximately? Like summer months, fall months?
Through Mr. Mayor, there are still a couple of matters that need to be dealt with, so that right now the idea is to strike up the tribunal because of the summer recess, and then we will work with the committee members on booking a meeting. So there is a possibility you're looking at August, maybe September, but it still could be all the way until October, depending on scheduling.
Okay. Other volunteers? So Councillor Deneau has volunteered so far. Other volunteers? Councillor Stretch?
Need a third?
We need a third. Yeah. Oh, sorry, you're chairing. I mean, if it's in August, I'm willing to do it. But if it goes into September, it's probably going to be a little problematic for me because it'll just be crazy.
I hear
busy.
that as a volunteer.
Sure, and then unless we need to, and we'll have to revisit if it rolls into September.
Okay, it was moved by Councillor Deneau, and it was resolved by Councillors Deneau, Stretch, and Mayor Urbanovic be appointed as the members of the Licensing Appeal Tribunal. All in favor? Opposed? And that is carried. Okay, moving on to 12.1.a, development charges exemption for affordable housing. Do I have a mover? Councillor Stretch. It was resolved that delegated authority to approve and execute agreements required under Section 4.1 of the Development Charges Act 1997 be granted to the Chief Financial Officer, Treasurer, or designate, with said agreements being to the satisfaction of the City Solicitor. As well as objection to notice of intention to designate 91 Madison Avenue South, DSD 2024-290. Oh, sorry. We already dealt with that, so we're good. Oh, I'm dealing with all of them? Sorry. So I need a mover then for 12.1.d.
So through the chair, so there is a mover for the one item. You can certainly call the vote on the one item, or you can ask the mover if they're willing to move the remaining items as well.
Councillor Stretch, are you willing to have them all dealt together? Okay, so you want them separated? Okay, so we'll do one by one. So on, 12.1.a on development charges, all those in favor? Opposed? And that's carried. Okay. 12.1.c, objection to notice of intention to, 12.1.d, Canada Community Building Fund Municipal Funding Agreement, FIN 2024-302, moved by the Mayor. It was resolved that the Mayor and Clerk be authorized to, Okay, go ahead.
Thank you. To Mr. Lautenbach, just for everyone's records, as I look at these numbers are higher than what our numbers have been thus far, I believe. Is that correct?
So through the chair, there is some indexing in terms of the current agreement. So we were around the 7.5 to 7, I think 7.9 at the last year, and now it's gone up to 8 million per year starting in 2024. So we have, forecasts of this indexing would occur. So it's been built into our forecast, but we'll be dealing with obviously allocation of that fund through the budget process.
And has the amount been adjusted as well to adjust for population shifts?
So through the chair, they would have taken that into account in terms of the allocation that AMO would have done in terms of the total funding that they've received.
Okay. But we were already at 7 something this past year?
We were in the 7 million mark, and now it's indexed up to 8 million.
Okay,
so that's the next 5 years.
It's a fairly hefty increase. Okay, thank you.
Okay. All those in favor? Opposed? And that carries. Next, we'll move on to 12.1.e, alcohol consumption in city parks pilot, INS 2024-306. Do we have a mover?
Yes, Kurt.
Councillor Deneau? Okay. And you want to?
I just want to speak to that report.
Please go ahead.
Yeah, so I'm not in support of the deferral proposal. I think I've made it known that I think it's worth a pilot project, and you know I'm not. I support staff's recommendations and I support the reports that have come forward, but I am disappointed that we're not at least going to trial it, because I know, you know, we parked this. It's not going to come to fruition until somebody else brings it up, and I think. As Toronto has exhibited, the sky is not going to fall down if we allow people to have a beverage or two in a park. And I think we are a bit fear-mongering, that people believe that a 2-4 is going to be picked up at the local beer store and brought into the park and drank unnecessarily. And so I can't support the deferral. But again, I respect everybody's position on this. But I think we can be adults, and I think we are not giving people the chance to be adults in our city. So that's just my comment.
Okay. You have Councillor Michaud and myself in the queue.
Thank you. To the Mayor, I appreciate Councillor Deneau's comments and not supporting the deferral. However, I think that there is enough I'll say troubling things happening in our community right now, and our police are taxed. They're taxed with all kinds of things. There's actually, you know, I hear stories that they're taking too long to get to calls, and I think that this is not the time to do a pilot project of this nature until things, I guess, settle down in society somewhat, and we can all maybe, you know, entertain this at some other time, or when we get some more. Information, but I will support this deferral. Thank you.
So I'm in the queue, and then Councillor Singh and Councillor Chapman.
Okay.
So actually, nobody's actually moved the motion, the staff recommendation yet. So I'm happy to move that.
Okay.
Sorry? Oh, okay. So I'll move it to get to make sure that that's on the table, and I will support it. And I want to be clear, because you know and I want to thank Councillor Deneau for bringing it forward in the beginning. You know, I think, as I said at the time when we first dealt with this, you know, I was born into a culture. And in a country where, you know, you kind of have your first drink when you're, I don't know, maybe 2, maybe earlier. I mean, not in any sort of significant way, but you certainly have the opportunity to taste, and you know, alcohol has always been around the house since I was a kid. I've always had access to it. You know, I always. Generally, made sure I, you know, did it consumed it in a responsible manner, and so I do get where the idea of this kind of pilot was coming from, particularly as we look at increased density in some parts of the city, and folks who maybe don't have access to. You know, be able to go out in a formal, legal way. You know, have a drink, for example, with a picnic. Although I'm sure there's probably some folks who get creative in their approaches, as no doubt many of the people around this horseshoe did when they were young teenagers and dealing with that circumstance. Having said that, I do think that, you know, we are dealing with some unique challenges at the moment. First of all, Victoria Park is a very busy park right now. We've heard from our enforcement partners the challenges that this would bring. We know that the challenges that our security and bylaw staff are already dealing with in the park. I think it's important that we bring some return stability to that park after a couple of years of some challenges, because it is really the crown jewel of our park system in the city. And we've also heard from our enforcement partners that with everything that's going on right now, this would not be a priority for them, to be frank, if they ended up getting calls on a busy day. And I'm not sure that would end up meeting the expectations of our community if and when there were any challenges or issues. So, and couple all that with the changing accessibility to alcohol starting this summer. I think it makes sense that we monitor the situation going forward. There is a body of work that isn't clearly referenced in this report that I believe our staff are looking at and will be coming back in the future, and that's the issue of how we manage our special events, and particularly some of the ones in the downtown, like Chris Kindle Market and so on. Is there an opportunity to perhaps create more walkable zones during those kinds of events? And I think that's another step towards a pilot that might allow us to sort of walk before we run on this kind of thing. And so I know staff are working on that and look forward to when that is going to come back to potentially choose to take advantage of that opportunity that I know the AGCO has made available for a few years. So with that, I will support the staff recommendation here.
Councillor Singh?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. In full agreement to Madam Chair, what you've said, and then Mayor Voinovich, I too, compliment Councillor Deneau of trying to be innovative to make our downtown more lively, at the same time, add some level of fairness, because again, some of the arguments that are made is, cannabis can be smoked anywhere because it falls under the Tobacco Act or whichever act that is, and then there are far more restrictions with alcohol consumption. And to be honest, I did have reservations on this direction to begin with, apart from the pilot itself. Some of those reservations to do with something that's already been referenced by Mayor Voinovich and Madam Chair of, the challenges that we face in our downtown and already struggles that we are encountering in Victoria Park, and the extra strain not only on Waterloo Regional Police but also our bylaw staff. And I think your intent to animate our downtown, although I applaud it, I think in this direction, at the moment, I think it could be a hindrance because of the amount of resources that would be required. Today we went through our audit committee, seeing exactly the financial position of the City of Kitchener and how we're faring. And we're faring well comparatively to other municipalities. While as I said earlier, we're not an island. We're facing the same issues as they are. We're just managing it better. And I think there are certain priorities that we want to make sure, from our bylaw perspective, that we deal with that, as opposed to adding an additional thing that they would have to enforce. And at the end of the day, with any bylaws, with any changes, they are not just written on paper. They come with resource costs. And that's really where my struggle was. That if you go ahead with this, even with a pilot, we have to have the extra resources in hand to ensure that it's a success rather than additional challenge to our community. That being said, and I think the reason why I really keyed in, Mr. Mayor, was you referenced it, which is we got to do more in our downtown. We have to have more of walkable zones. The parks was not my preferred space, but along King Street, I've been around this horseshoe for a while, and I've been really kind of begging, encouraging, and hoping that we have more events in our downtown where we close King Street from, far enough extension, and then we animate that space. We involve the BIA, we get the restaurants going, and people can walk, drink, and enjoy the various different eateries in our downtown. That is where I want to see this direction. So this is not fruitless. What you've triggered the dialogue for us to engage with our staff, with our special events team, not just for special events, but encouraging for us to create more opportunities in the summer, the 2-3 months that we can enjoy, and I would absolutely support that direction. But for now, I think it's better to wait and see while we engage with our special event staff, and hopefully you can lead that charge carrying forward.
Thank you, Councillor Singh. Councillor Chapman.
Yeah, thanks, Jason. But I really want to thank staff for considering this and coming back with the report that they've come back with. So Victoria Park is in Ward 9, and yes, we've got a lot of challenges there still. So I appreciate a deferral. I think that's a good call. I think right now we need a summer that's calm, and we're maybe, and it's not, right? Like traffic is a big issue. There are so many issues that revolve around the park, and I just think we know people drink there now, but making it a legal activity, I don't think is the route we want to take at this point. So, thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Chapman. Councillor Schneider.
Thank you, Chair Johnson. I want to thank you, Councillor Deneau, for bringing this forward. We've heard a lot of great comments around the horseshoe. I would like to see this happen, but I understand the logic behind the deferral. My belief is that if we did a pilot, the vast majority of people who would take advantage of it would be responsible. I look forward to the boathouse opening up. I think there would be an opportunity for them to do takeout picnic baskets with some nice sandwiches and a bottle of wine. I look back to the Kitchener Auditorium when you could only consume alcohol in the bar area, or a set-off area. You couldn't consume it in the seating area at a sporting event or a concert. The pilot took place, and there's been no problems. In the past, you would have to consume your alcoholic beverage quickly during intermission. Now you can spread it out and sip it and enjoy it over the course of a hockey game or a basketball game or a concert. On our events, as Councillor Singh has brought up, and Mayor Vivanovic, that it'd be so nice if there's a walkabout area where you could just simply enjoy a beverage of your choice and not be in a fenced-in area. So I think this is a great idea, and maybe the timing isn't just quite right now, but while this is being deferred, I don't want to see it fall off the radar. I really thank you for bringing this forward. It certainly sparked a lot of discussion, and I hope the discussion continues and that we can work this out and see the responsible use of enjoying a nice beverage in Victoria Park. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Schneider. Councillor Stratch.
Thank you. I just wanted to add some comments. I will be supporting staff's recommendation. And a few things I wanted to be, I guess, just comment on. I'm not moving towards temperance. I do think it is a timing issue here, especially within Victoria Park. To echo some of the things the other councillors have mentioned. Some other things I really thought about that we didn't hear from, I'd like to hear more from public health about a situation, including a park area with, playgrounds, splash pads, a multi-use place like that. I know as a city we've declared a drug crisis, housing crisis, climate crisis, intimate partner violence crisis. And when I think about adding, alcohol into that mix, I don't see it supporting those crisis effects at this time. That's my, with what's been presented, that's sort of where I'm leaning and what I'm thinking about. And if you're lucky enough that those crises don't affect you, do I believe you could probably drink in the park well and be responsible? Absolutely, but I know these things have long tails. And so right now I'm not supportive. I am supportive of staff's motion, but I'm not supportive of drinking in the park currently, but am open to revisiting it in future as we learn how to do this well culturally and perhaps hyper-locally here in Kitchener.
Thank you, Councillor Stretch. And I think I'm the last in the queue, correct? Thank you. So I'll make my own comments. And Councillor Stretch, I appreciate your comments about looking into public health, etc. And I actually looked up some studies today, and one of them is from University of Victoria, funnily enough, and they did a study on this in 2022 during COVID, as many municipalities were taking a look into opening up different areas for drinking during COVID. So one of the things that they say is a summary of guidance for local governments. Unlike licensed establishments such as restaurants and pubs, which have regulated oversight of alcohol consumed on premises, unsupervised alcohol consumption on public properties carries a unique set of public health and safety risks. On balance, the evidence suggests that such policy changes will increase harms within communities and should therefore not be implemented. If they do choose to proceed, this policy change warrants careful consideration and ongoing review. And they offer kind of a number of ways of mitigating that. One is something that Councillor Schneider had brought up, that to encourage to set alcohol consumption possession limits, implement meal requirements, prohibit glass containers, etc., to encourage purchase of alcohol from nearby on-trade restaurants, pubs, or food trucks, people that have rules in place around who can purchase, etc. So what I'm hoping that whenever staff comes back after they look into this at a future date, that we can look into the evidence-based research and that has been done. I'd be happy to share this information with staff. One of the things that they also talk about, though, is that for most people, what this affects most of all are the people that will have most harm in society. And so I think that that's really important to consider as well as we take a look at this. So I thank Councillor Deneau as well, and I appreciate looking into something different. But I think that having really taking a close view into this and what its implications are and what the studies that have been done are really going to be important. So thank you. And with that, I'll call for the vote. Who moved that again? I can't remember. Oh, the mayor. I'm sorry. Thank you. And all those in favor? Opposed? And that is carried. Thank you. All right. Moving on to 12.3, items arising from in camera. And before us, we have some legal advice from an earlier matter.
Through the chair.
Do we have a mover, please? Sorry.
I was just going to note that through the chair, there's a resolution on the screen.
Okay. Do I need to read it or? Okay. Okay. So it's, we need a mover for that, please. Oh, Councillor Michel, thank you. All those in favor? Opposed? And that is carried. Okay. Moving on to 12.2 for information. Those are all listed there. 12.4, the Committee of the Whole report.
Move that the committee rise and report.
All those in favor? All right, it has been moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Michaud that the proceedings and the recorded pecuniary interests and conflicts taken in the meeting of the Committee of the Whole held this date as attached hereto and forming part of these minutes be and the same are hereby adopted and confirmed.
All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Motion for 3 readings of the bylaws with the additional bylaws. Okay. Did we deal with the conflict in versions 1 and 2?
So through the chair, Councillor Singh was absent for the first round of bylaws, so because this is third reading and he has declared a conflict on the bylaws, we could separate those out.
Okay, thank you. So I'll deal with the bylaws, including the additional ones that Councillor Singh does not have a conflict on. First, all those, moved by Councillor Michaud, seconded by Councillor Davey. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. And then the ones that Councillor Singh does have a conflict on, moved by Councillor Johnson, seconded by Councillor Stretch. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. I did say that I would do my mayor's report at the end. So Council, just and to those watching this evening, Monday marks Canada Day, a time when we come together to celebrate the birth of the nation that we all call home. It's a time for us to reflect on the values that unite us, the achievements that define us, and the dreams that inspire us in this great country. As we gather with family and friends this coming weekend, and in particular on Canada Day to celebrate, let's remember the history that's shaped our country. From coast to coast to coast, Canada is a tapestry of cultures, languages, and traditions. And this rich diversity is our strength and our shared identity, as the Multicultural Festival, for example, showed this past weekend. We also acknowledge at this time and pay respect to the Indigenous peoples who have lived on this land for time immemorial. Their contributions and heritage are integral to the Canadian story, and it's our collective responsibility to continue working towards reconciliation. This Canada Day, we also recognize the hard work and resilience of our community, whether through their acts of kindness, volunteerism, or simply being good neighbours. Each of us plays a vital role in making our city a better place, and our collective dedication to our community, especially during challenging times, exemplifies what has become known as the Canadian spirit. We will be celebrating Canada Day here with an in-person family-friendly celebration in Carl's Air Square from 2 p.m. to 11 p.m. on July the 1st. There is an awesome lineup of live music at City Hall featuring many local musicians, including Danny Michel, and our headline act, of course, April Wine. And the evening will be ending off at dusk with a beautiful fireworks display synced to music. So on behalf of all of us on Kitchener City Council and the staff at the city, happy Canada Day to everyone. We hope to see many of you here at Carl's Air Square as we celebrate as a community and a country the birthday of our nation. And lastly, before we deal with a motion to adjourn, I will just say that the score is 1-1 in the second period between Edmonton and the Panthers. So with that, motion to adjourn, moved by Councillor Deneau, seconded by Councillor Schneider. All those in favor, opposed, that's carried. Have a great summer, everyone.